Hey there, I'm Eternal, and I'm an object show fan that has barely watched any object shows. We have to fix that. Let's play Object Catchup. Hello and welcome in to Object Catchup, the series where we discuss object show episodes right after watching them. Whether they are new or old, famous or unknown, it doesn't matter. We will get to it all. Now, yesterday we took a look at WBS and UBS. For the first time, I made quite the blunder thinking UBS was a series from this year, which warped my perception of it slightly. But in general, it ended up being fine because WBS was properly released recently. Um, and in fact, today we are not actually going to be straying too far away from WBS. You want to know why? Because we're going to be taking a look at a show from one of the creators of WBS itself. All right, because we are taking a look at the recent episode created by plazsgalaxy, episode 1 of a show titled Access Denied. All right, Access Denied, a 40-minute long episode 1 here. Released a couple of days ago. I should have theoretically gone into this yesterday. However, yesterday is technically residue from the other day because the fact that it didn't upload. So we are getting to this a bit later than I was originally expecting. I don't really know what to expect here with this series. Honestly, like generally, I have no idea. The thumbnail looks quite cool. I see a little bit of a pop-up host type character error message maybe, which gives off some like Dookie, possibly crazy host type character, and a bunch of characters. See Nyan Cat, it could be very internet as well. I may be imagining, but really, I don't know what to expect here heading into Access Denied. We'll be taking a look at that, and then a couple of additional things that I have in mind. But of course, we'll see how the situation is, how long I end up even talking about Access Denied, because it's going to be quite a while. All right, time to watch it. The Whole Web and You, released 4 days ago. Let's go. Hello. I have just come back from watching Access Denied 1, The Whole Web and You. This is it. This might be it. We have just found peak media. We might have just discovered one of the greatest object show episodes that I have covered on Catchup. Absolutely. At least, okay, I'm not going to say overall because I know that there's a lot of big, important, very well acclaimed object shows that I haven't watched, like One and all that stuff, which I think this might even take a song or two from. But in general, as far as the things that I have covered in this series, immediately, this is amazing in every single damn category. I mean, what in the world, bro? That is unbelievable. So, we start off here with the cold open. The cold open of us a couple of years ago, apparently, hanging out in the house, chillaxing. It's the daytime. We get to see, everybody. There's like, basically, there's this group of friends, all right? This group of friends in the town, the friend group, and all of that stuff, that they were together. They were best friends. They were hanging out all the time, when they were more kids. And now they're just like chilling. They were having fun and everything. Some people were more out there, but in general they were just best buds, all right? And everything was great. And then we get to a couple of years later. It's a sad. It's a new day, and freaking wine glass ends up arriving there. At school. Mom and dad are not there. They are not in the house right now. Not really sure what happened to them. We don't get any information on that actually beyond what is going on there. So Wine is alone. I don't like in the house. So we don't get to see them back then anyways, right? Like we don't get to see in the flashback Wine's mom or dad. We don't get to see anybody's parents. We don't get to see Wine's mom or dad. And in this case, we don't get to see Wine's mom or dad either because they're gone, according to this note. Don't forget, to take care of the house, right? And it's just a no, and they're not there, which makes it very interesting because, of course, if the part ends up happening. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. All right. But it is an interesting detail because, of course, other characters they do seem to have parents and all that stuff, which ends up being important little detail. So they end up going to school, and indeed they are in school. They are in their own society thing. Like a lot of the time, one of the critiques that I will have with audio shows is that it feels like everybody there is everybody in the world, right? Like that's kind of the thing because we never even see somebody else. But in this case, we do actually get to see background characters, right, and stuff walking around and all that stuff, sitting down and stuff. So I like that because it gives that bigger sense of society that ends up being missing from a lot of these object shows that have like this they have this intertwined group of people, but then like who the hell is there anybody else in the world? And there is. So that's a good little detail. I would like that. And they're off debating about school. They're a couple of years later. Wrench and Wine are still quite good friends, but the rest of the group, is kind of shifted toward not being great. And a couple of days there's gonna be a test, and Wrench is super stressed. I mean, mega stressed out by it. Just studying all the time. Wine is would like to do it, but just can't really focus on it, which is makes an interesting dichotomy. They just have this. They're very nostalgic. They have this nostalgia happening of the good old days. They look around. They see Hairball hanging out with people. They see straw. What the hell are you called? Straw Hat? I don't know. Hanging out with an ice cream, the crown, and in general, they're just looking back at that friend group, and it's like, there feels like there's somebody missing, all right? It just feels like it's not the same, and yeah, they end up feeling bad about it because they're more lonely now because they don't have that friend group eventually until they are walking around that they end up discovering some things about other people, like what the Potion and Bucket are doing. And eventually they go to the burger place and they find out that Coffee's working there and are part of the friend group, right? And they eventually find Kern, which is apparently a celebrity fella. Kern got like a celebrity, no, something. They got like an acting gig somewhere. They have a car and drive apparently, so that's why they probably crashed the wall. But they end up being there and then end up leaving because the Wine's very upset that the cone doesn't remember them, which that makes sense. They're just walking around. We get to see some. By the way, the designs of the background characters debatably are more interesting than the main character, but like whoever's in the background is always really really interesting looking. Um, then we end up having an idea that Wine gets. All right, Wine gets the idea, host the party, invite everybody else from the old friend group, and then they'll come by and have a cool party. Okay, so we have this main situation and this main sort of air that is a play that, of course, is going to be playing the entire cast here. They are old friends who have naturally or unnaturally, in some cases, drifted apart. However, they're not really in bad rapport with anybody else. They're just not as good of friends, And sometimes there does get that nostalgia from like, oh, remember how it was, remember how like things were and all that stuff, right? It's a very nostalgia show. The characters experience nostalgia. They're directly like, even the setting of the show, of course, ends up being a very nostalgic style of show. Like it's a show. It's entirely in 4:3, as you can tell by the fact that it doesn't perfectly fit into the catch-up layout here. But like in general, its nostalgia is its main theme, both in what the characters are dealing with and what the show itself is meant to evoke. It's meant to evoke nostalgia for anybody who watches it. It's meant to evoke nostalgia for like the characters themselves have it. And yeah, nostalgia is this interesting thing, right? Where everyone has deals with it a bit differently, you know, because I think, in my opinion, everybody has nostalgia in some capacity, right? Whether it's remembering something fondly that happened or not remembering something fondly that happened. I think everybody in a case has nostalgia. And I've also had nostalgia. You know, there's certain times where I will remember how something was, right? And I'll go, oh yeah, that was cool. That was a time, right? However, me personally, of course, I don't exactly in like I've never really been too big on a nostalgia thing because like I am a fan of the idea that like things evolve, you know, through time, and I do very much so believe in that. So I don't ever try too hard to push into nostalgia really as a person, you know, into like, oh, we should hang out like the good old days, right? It's like things are very natural in the way that they happen, and you can't usually force something too hard. So I've never acted upon too much of nostalgia. I always think of nostalgia more as a fond remembrance rather than something to chase, right? But in this case, it is very much so. Wine is chasing from the nostalgia. It's like, oh, remember when we had a party and we were all chilling and we were all good the other time? And it's like, yeah, but that's not them anymore. We have evolved, we have changed, we have gotten new friends, and it's not like you're not friends with you anymore, but it's like in general, the circle has the shape of the connection ring has shaped, and the persons have shaped, and in general, it's just gonna be different, right? Whether it's right now, it was 5 years, it's gonna be different. So yeah, this party ends up being roughly a dead vibe because people kind of hang out with each other, but they're A, stressed because of school, they're B, just kind of awkward because they've not talked to each other in a while, and they've just kind of you know, causing a mess. They bicker a lot, as old friends sometimes tend to do, right? So we have a couple of people. Paint Bucket, no, we have just Bucket and Painty, which is a paint bucket, which are brother and sister. So we know about them. There's also a couple of our characters. We haven't mentioned the cat. Should we talk about the cast? We should probably talk about the cast. So Wineglass is the main character, technically, the titular character that causes this mess to happen. All right, we have an object show with a titular character, which is probably one of the main reasons. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why this audio show ends up having no voting. It makes perfect sense to why this audio show doesn't have any voting. We'll talk about that later. But we end up having Coffee, which is a very like grounded character in the sense that they're super logical in the same way that Wrench and Pawn, they're super logical characters. They approach the world in a more relaxed, more logical way of thinking about it. So they're not really gonna those three leave themselves very little room for wonder, which just sort of makes them very dry characters, and they're very serious. They're very right. We got Crown, which is also no, not really. Crown is different. Crown is more of the they're more girl. I don't know how to describe this character. They're like not generic. I don't know how to say. I'm trying to find a word, but as soon as I think of any word, I discard it immediately because it doesn't fit. She's like, I don't know. I think she's like average teen girl, right? She's like she would if she would find it cool to be famous. She finds cool to be good looking, right? She finds it cool, all that stuff, and she'll play along to stuff. She goes with the flow a bit, not too much. The pirate fella is another fun, wants to have fun, so that's all cool. They're a pirate ship, but they're a sailboat, if I'm not mistaken, is their name. I just checked the credits. But they look like a pirate ship because they got a pirate helmet. They break a chandelier, which, all right, that's one thing in the house broken. Then yeah, as I said, there's Bucket and the Painty. Painty's very quiet. That's a quiet little fella. They don't say much of anything. They just kind of relax. Um, And then Bucket, haven't out of the characters, I haven't gotten too much of a rapport on Bucket, to be honest. They seem they're very sensible. Hairboy is kind of not a jock, but they're the jock. Come on, they're the jock. They're kind of gangsta style, but not really. Then there's very very excited little headband, which is not a fly. Okay, I haven't been able to figure out if headbands is a flying character. Like, do you fly? Like, literally can fly? I don't know. I don't remember if I saw a scene where you could fly or not. I guess I'll have to see because they hover, that's for sure, but I don't know if they fly. And eventually people just start arguing, especially after Cone arrives, because Cone is yeah, not exactly great. Proceeds to immediately break like a bunch of shit, but they got money. They're annoying now. Computer, which doesn't speak, but people can still understand them based on the bleeps and bleeps, ends up hanging out with the straw hat. By the way, this guy, this person, okay, I don't know what you are, but like that is the best design I've ever seen. You take the fucking hay bales and then you freaking it's shapeshifted into a character because you can do that. Oh my god. That is the best design I've ever seen. And they're so quiet. They speak very quiet. They speak more than painting, but like they speak quite often, but they're rather quiet and they're cool. That's probably debatably in line with my favorite character of the show so far because I really love them. I love them. They're really cool. The computer, I mean, it's of course going to be a little bit hard to gauge the computer because, like, um, they don't directly say words, but they seem to be a little bit maybe codependent. Like they were very much so with the Straw Hat, and now no Straw Hat, bro. Bro? I don't know the name of my favorite character. I'm actually watching. I forgot. I forgot. I'm bad. What is the name? No. What was the name? Hold on, I'm getting this. Straw Doll. Straw Doll. Okay. Alright, let's lock in that name. They're called Straw Doll. Okay, and then we'll have that name, alright? So yeah, alright. Then we have and then the summoning ghost. But anyway, what I was saying, oh yeah, computer. Computer did give me the vibes of being a little bit codependent, perhaps. To be honest, because they seem to be kind of relying on the straw doll, and then they were sad alone. But then when Headband invited them to come along, now they're happy again. Like they seem to be, they're like that codependent style character. They seem to not really do a lot by themselves. They go along with a teammate, but they're not really going along by themselves. They end up summoning a Ouija board because of course you do. So there's ghosts in the house now that break a bunch of shit. Cone is stealing shit because I don't know. Cone is Cone. Potion. Okay, I haven't actually talked about Potion. Potion is another character I really like. Dude, this cast is great. Potion is that like excessively smart girl. It's like that type of character that has too many IQ points to where like yeah, in a way that they're not socially aware. It's that style of character, in a lot of media there's that character, but this is exactly that style of character. It's that character that is so unbelievably intelligent that they've actually become too logical and therefore lose the capability to read the room, to read situations properly, socially speaking. Right? So you lose social intelligence because you're just unbelievably regularly intelligent, right? And just a nerd. So that's what the potion does. But I really like her. She's fun. Blah 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 blah. Then, however, they proceed the ghosts make the creation explode. They try to take it off. They proceed to turn everything on fire. The splinkers turn on. The DJ set breaks itself. The headband eats a chocolate bar with 10,000 milligrams of fucking sugar. I don't know why that was ever there in the first place, but okay, I guess we've got cocaine in the building. So then they go absolutely hyper. Painty fucking dies. No, it gets fucking the water bucket's all full now. It's just an absolute mess. Tries to call in the call. It just ends up a disaster. Everybody's fighting. The people over the Ouija board are fighting. The DJ Mix people are still fighting. The Ouija board people are still fighting. Everybody's fighting. The freaking everybody's gonna die. And then Wineglass is just fucking done. Wineglass is done with this bullshit. Immediately screams at everybody, what is wrong with you? All I wanted to do was have a party. By the way, okay, hold on, little bit of a minute. Completely unrelated note to anything. I will actually say, YouTube subtitles, the auto subtitles, have actually started picking up on shouting, by the way. Like, they write all caps if it's shouting, which is very impressive. I didn't know YouTube even did that, but they do that now. So that's kind of impressive. I noticed it in a couple of situations, but yeah, it's a thing. Wineglass just be so miserable. And they storm upstairs to go be sad. And then they close the door and are just done with it. They try to they look at the old memories, they reminisce a bit. And as they're reminiscing, Pawnee ends up entering the room and proceeds to majorly shock Wineglass in a moment of fragility. Anyways, by the way, where was Pawn the entire time? Okay, so that's a question. Question that I did not understand before. Because for a moment, okay, I'm going to be 100% honest. My original immediate guess when I saw this whole situation was that Pawnee was that like this group might have broke up because of Pawn. Because Pawn was in there. So when they're looking at the memory, it's like something, what has gone wrong? And it just gave that vibe, right? Initially, when Pawn was there, and was the first character like in the first scene. That I was like, oh, were you an important character? Are you missing? What happened? No, that's actually not what happened. You're still here. I don't know where you were the entire time. I don't know if you showed up late to the party or if you just happened to live here as well. I don't know if they live together, but like they just are. They're there, so that's absolutely a wrong presumption that I had. But they end up being together, and end up talking about, the change of things. But then right before Pawnee can state their opinion, which I think that they were gonna say to let things go, because that makes sense. Wineglass crying. The computer ends up being mildly annoying. Tries to log into the computer a couple of times. It doesn't really work, and then the computer ends up shaking frantically, and then we end up logging into Doors 98, which is the new operating system. Fake Windows. By the way, this is an excellent, like, whoever animated or fucking boot up with the computer, like, they do a good job. Then we end up on access denied, the whole web and you, because of course we're on a computer, which is the whole web, when they end up exploring the whole web, but now there's you as part of it. You're literally in there. So it's a great title. Then you end up waking up and everybody is just in a computer. Going into everybody at the party is in a computer. They're going crazy, and we end up having this whole situation. So that is pretty much Act 1 and Act 2. Now, like, I mean, that was Act 1. It's sort of the pre-setup. And now I love this concept, dude. This concept is so good. This concept is so good. What in the world is this? Because we have, like, everybody's in a LAN, and they're not really, like, it's really interesting as well because of the different archetypes that are placed onto the characters, and there's such an interesting situation that are placed in it. And it's like, you can see how different characters deal with the situation more differently, right? Like, it's kind of like a character like Coffee, for example, or a character like Wrench, or a character like Pawn is just like, what the hell? This is not, they're so logical that they're like, this physically cannot fucking exist. So we cannot, get out, whatever this is, get out, because this isn't the way things are meant to be, right? They're very logically minded. However, you can see that there's other characters, like the Straw Hat, and the straw hat and the pirate and the sailboat and stuff, that like, they end up being and the headband as well, they end up being very much so more open-minded to the concept, because there's different ways to look at this situation, and we're seeing them represented. Because you can look at this situation and it's like, okay, what the fuck is this? Get out. Or you can look at the situation as like, okay, I don't know how we got here, but we're here. Right? Like, that's the type of situation. There's multiple ways to think about it. You can immediately try to leave, or you can just accept, there's an acceptance. Like, do you want to accept the fact that you have entered a weird place that looks like a completely different dimension, or are we not doing that? Right? That's kind of the situation. So yeah, they end up trying to figure it out until eventually popping out is this fella. I don't remember your name. The computer fella that is also a contestant. Your circle? Wait, oh no, you say your name. So they're I don't. Whoever are you called? You could just call Circle. No, I think you're called Circle. But yeah, they were just living here. I don't know how many people end up actually living in the computer. That is a very interesting question. But there's a couple of people living in the computer. Circle lives in the computer. I don't know what they are, by the way, because of course every object is something. Whether it's record later, which we end up getting to see in the CD player, or pop up, which is the immediate character that's about to show up. But yeah, Circle's like, hey, what's going on in the computer? Pop-Up ends up approaching. Pop-Up doesn't really know how these people are around, but Pop-Up is sort of the fun-loving host object show style character that is incredibly careless. They're just incredibly careless. I would probably describe this pop. How would I describe this Pop-Up to you? Okay. I think that the best way that I could probably describe this pop-up is like, what if that, I don't know, because it gives off X quite a bit in the way that it's carefree, and in just kind of the way that it's like if 4 was X. It's like if 4 was more X, basically. In my opinion, it's like a kind of combination. Because you got the hostiness of 4, but with the more added on carefreeness and niceness of X, I think, a little bit. So they end up being, I think, that combination. Some people wondering about, then you see, like, we end up having the directly situation. Like, Offie's like, hey, isn't this fucking weird? And Shaw has like, yeah, but like, we're here. So, yeah. They end up deciding to join because you can win the Orb of All Power, but you get one wish. So you pretty much get one genie wish, because you can do anything that you possibly want. You can have one wish, okay, which is interesting. Because it's just what in the world. So they end up having a competition, and Pop-Up says that they'll send them all back. So I don't know if Pop-Up specifically wanted to do that. I think Pop-Up wanted to bring them in. We don't know why. No, Pop-Up's never going to say. Let's be absolutely honest here. Pop-Up's not the type of host that's actually going to be talk to you logically. I end up loading a challenge. I love the gag of circles, spinning them around, and then loading in. What are they? Hold on, wait. What are they called? Let me hear. White. Your name is just White. Wait, what? What? That's your name? What is bro's name? Nah, wait. There's no way that's your name. Why? That's crazy name. Really? That's crazy. Oh no, they're called Light. No, not White. They're called Light. Wait, really? Hold on. Bro, I need to listen to it again. Hold on. I'm super sorry, but this is a must figure out. Hold on. What the hell? Hold on. Let me. Light. Okay, so you're called Light. All right. I mean, I don't know how exactly you exist, but I guess hello, Light. Light. Fucking no. You happen to exist. So then they end up forming a couple of teams. 3 teams of 5, including Light. So, we end up having Team Ruby, Team Sapphire, and Team Emerald. They don't get to name teams, thank God. Then, what ends up being the teams? I don't exactly remember. Hold on, let me quickly get the team lineups because I know they appear in a scene. Okay, so Team Ruby. Oh yes. Okay, Team Ruby ends up being the last team to actually pick anybody. So they end up being the trio of like Pawnee, Wrench, and Wine, because that's Wine's friends. Bucket ends up tagging along. They're also pretty much at that level of sensible as Wine. They end up very much so in that category. Then there's there's Cone, which ends up being very much so off the last one to be picked because nobody cares about them. Then there's Team Sapphire, which is Hairball's team. So Hairball tries to form a team, ends up having Crown on board, Coffee on board, I guess, and then Headband comes along with Computer. So that's the second team. This team this team is quite disagreeable. They disagree a lot. They're gonna disagree a lot. Coffee alone just causes the amount of conflicts per capita of this team to increase by 50%. So that team's gonna have a little bit of a complicated time. But of course, they are all friends. And then there's Team Emerald, which has White, the new fella. Then has the Potion, the Painty, the Straw Hat. This is very much so more just on the who cares chill vibes, except for Painty. They care actually a lot. But yeah, we end up having the challenge. So a couple of smiling people are logged down. The challenge is tag, which means that you have to, well, not get tagged. So, you have to go to different places. So, as usual, my personal tactic with tag is to go as far as possible, right? Because technically, if you go as far as possible, you shouldn't get tagged. Why? Because, there's just a lot of you. There's just I agree with the tactic that Coffee thing brings up with splitting up, because splitting up means that if one person finds you, there's still got 4 others, right? Instead of if somebody finds you, they're probably gonna get a quadruple whammy of getting everybody in, right? So yeah, I don't think it works quite as efficiently when you are considering the situation, right? Of the fact that we are dealing as the taggers being this super fast, powerful little fella, right? So yeah, they proceed to come in here. So one team decides to half split up. Yeah, the team with Coffee ends up being half split up. Half go to one direction, Headband and Computer go to another. Then the computers go in the files, which I must say is an interesting idea from Painty, considering the fucking this guy, Light. You literally just said that you live here, and so if you think about it from the context of Painty might as well have just said, "Hey, let's go in your house," because as far as they know, this guy lives in the files. I don't know where this guy lives. I haven't seen a house in here, but yeah, we end up going into the files, which is it's a lot of files. They end up Straw Hat ends up opening a mail, so Melee ends up leaving. That's fair enough. I mean, the computer does seem to be very old, so glitchy. And corrupted does seem to be a thing that happens. We are also in a boxed up landscape, which ends up being important. They all end up going into solitaire because, I don't know, they end up building a house, which they could do that. I'm not why would you do that? It's not a great idea. Look, as far as cone ideas go, I'll accept that the idea of building a card house is not that bad of an idea, but it's pretty fucking bad of an idea because, if you go into the solitaire land and see a gigantic structure, you don't think people might be hiding in there. It's not gonna be like, oh yeah, they're just a massive house of solitaire cards. Yeah, that sounds perfectly fine to me. No, they're gonna get fucking destroyed, man. And in fact, they do. They eventually. So yeah, a couple of people ends up, and then the group of copying fella ends up going into the internet. They end up feeling lucky, so then they drop down all the way into the web. Meanwhile, Computer and the Headband end up going into this record player. Generally, they're just jazzing out to tunes the whole time. What is one thing that I really think was maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity, right? in my opinion, because this is a missed opportunity. Because hold on a minute, computer. That's a like you're a character, you know? Like this is a person in the that sense. So you are like you know. Hold on, wait. What is your name exactly? Now that I think about it, let me try to figure out what your name is. What is your name? Hold on. Is your name not credited? Wait, wine, potion, crown, painty, bucket, headband, light, melee, record. Wait, what? Oh yeah, I guess you don't have a. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't have a voice actor. Yeah, that's true because you don't have a voice. Okay, that's fair. So you're not listed. Okay, because I don't remember because I'm now doubting. I'm now getting like second mind that you might be called like record. Not record. You might be called like monitor instead of computer. But either way, like I thought it's a missed opportunity because it's like, hold on, that's a computer in a computer. This should be a bigger deal than it is. Like, you should surely be way more interested in the factoid that you are literally in one of you. You know, like, I feel like this should be a bigger deal to the PC than it is. This fella, the only ever technological device in here. Like, you're a technological device in a technological device. Like, surely this is a bigger deal. But no, they're just chilling. They're one of the most chill about it. In fact, like, they don't actually give a shit, which is interesting because I think that like this should theoretically be a massive deal to me. I don't know, but yeah. Then we end up having a bunch of people hiding, and then after a bit, they end up having I find it the ideas that Potion has to freaking say sorry to wine is a card saying we're sorry, a date to a restaurant. But what? Who? So what, you set him up, freaking wingman, and then or an apology party. This is what I mean. This is yes, of course. Sorry for ruining your party. Can we maybe invite you to our party? Yeah, okay, Potion. Good stuff. Good stuff, Potion. You are so socially unaware. The shot has also pretty honest about it though. You know, you gotta say it face to face. They end up escaping. Eventually, the fellas come by to try to catch them. They're just hanging out in the internet. I have no idea what. I mean, we can kind of guess because we get a couple of early internet style stuff there. They end up on the 9cat if I'm not mistaken and stuff. So like they end up. So like I'm not exactly sure what era we are because remember we are on a Windows 98 computer. Okay, Door 98, but we're on a Windows 98 computer, which has always been around. And it's been quite a couple of years since that computer's been around at least, and it's old, but we're still in that era. So you can see by kind of 2005 that I'm imagining that we're probably 2006-ish era. When was 9cat? When did 9cat happen? 9cat. When did this happen? April 2011. Okay, then I'm wait, what? Okay, well, look, no, bro. Okay. There's no way that I'm fucking trying to analyze the timeline, that I'm predicting that the show creators analyze the timeline of the internet reference they're making to make sense of the time of the show. Come on, that's bullshit. But I'd probably, even though 9cat was 2011, I'd probably still predict that there's probably like, what, 2006-ish era, where like the computer's starting to get pretty unusable. Windows Vista is about to come out, about to be 2 computers obsolete by this point, right? It's kind of breaking itself down. And that's not fair because it is a little bit of an interesting situation because like if you think about it, no, yeah, this whole situation, right, in the way that it is, in the way that it's functioning, is very, I think, operating systemally confused. Because hold on, is this Windows 98? Because if you think about it being Windows 98, Windows 98 doesn't look like this. Like we're on Windows XP, like obviously. Like that's the environment that Windows XP has. Like that's Bliss wallpaper. This is Bliss wallpaper. The files, they're in the exact color scheme, right, that Windows XP uses. You know, in the way that Windows XP is. If I'm not mistaken, the login screen is exactly the same. Right, the one that happens with the Asset 9. The pop-up is blue around the border. The way that the pop-up looks is also is Windows XP style, right? Which is like, hold on, like this is Windows XP. This isn't Windows 98, you know? Just in the way that it functions. However, certain aspects are Windows 98. Like the CD player does look like the Windows 98 one, or Windows 98, Windows 2000. Yes, I'm an operating system nerd. How do you know? Yes, I know. Yes, I was once an operating system nerd. Fun fact, once I had, I think, a virtual machine of every Windows on one of my computers. That took up a hilariously large amount of space. I don't have that anymore, but it was a thing. But yeah, so the CD player does look like the Windows 98 one, and then certain aspects do, like for example the mail, because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there was a native mail app in Windows XP, but in Windows 98 and 2000 there was, because that was like the time where that was arriving, that was becoming a thing. So like, yeah, see, it's kind of operating system confused. Like a Windows 90 XP, it's like a combination of the two, you know, which kind of makes an interesting system. But anyways, we have actually a great little chat between Painty, Straw Hat, and Light. Okay, ends up being shown, because you know Light's more asking about it. I find it interesting that Light can successfully guess that it's the wine glasses party, which gives him an interesting opportunity to think, like, does Light know who wine glass is? That's actually an interesting question, because, you know, it is their computer. So, like, okay, we're presuming that when you use a computer, you're not in the computer. Like, this is a different situation than just being in a computer, right? So, that's, like, kind of the situation. Then here they wanted to apologize, blacked out, trying to bring all this together. What did Light say? I mean, after all the years of being here, I kind of can't really be social either. So I guess that means be awkward together. Where were that's a good, I like that quote. I need that quote. And that quote's important. I'm sorry, that quote's important, because that means Light was somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like that gave me, like, I'm really interested in the life of the people in here, because what are you? You know, like, what are you? In the way that, like, hold on, after years of being here, where were you before? No, like, I don't know. That's really, because you're not, because the thing about Light is that they don't look to be a program, kind of like how the record is the record player, like, or I mean, they're not the CD player. The same thing. A record isn't the CD player either, which is interesting. But like pop-up is directly the pop-up, so that's like, I don't know. It's very interesting. However, yeah, they end up hanging out. Straw Hat does absolutely solos. I mean, okay, well, they don't actually solo, but they gave a very good attempt at it. Then we have a team sabotage. Kern ends up getting absolutely yeeted out of the map. They get yeeted out of the map, which is fucking crazy. Then after the CD player, one of the fellas come in. The computer manages to fucking make a noise so illegal the fucking head guy exploded. So, okay. Nine Cat also gets attacked by the fellas. They eventually get pushed off, but the Nine Cat's slowly coming down. They decide to jump off because why? I mean, I don't think they ever actually jump off. Like, I don't think they intentionally jumped off. I think they slipped, to be honest, because Coffee really didn't want to do it. But I think they eventually slipped. I mean, I understand that the Nine Cat was crashing, but look, it's crashing into where? You know, like, would you rather have something land, or would you rather not land and just fall into the void? You know, like, as long as you're on the Nine Cat, you're technically good for a bit. I think staying on the Nine Cat was the best approach, because okay, best thing, you know, like, I understand an airplane crash is bad, right? But like, if you have an airplane crash down from 10,000 miles per hour into the ground, that is better than just falling 10,000 miles into the ground. You know, because at least there's something for the impact. Like, it's still bad. It's a lose-lose, but like, one of them was worse than the other. You know. Eventually, after everybody being crazy, Light just causes like fucking electricity beam of 1 million miles to arrive. Fucking almost glitches everything in the process. Team Ruby ends up being the team that lost. Interesting enough, the dead contestants were just zipped up. Like, the tagged contestants. They were just kind of zipped up, which is interesting. I wonder how it's like being zipped up. Um, People found it relatively cool that Light could do that. I think Light's design changed, right? They ended up being more flame. They turned into a flame. I don't. This character is interesting, dude. This character is very, very interesting. Um, they get a pizza party as well. Sir, Coffee is so unbelievably bewildered by this. You see, it's that logical mind. It's that logical mind at play. You can see it in the way that Hairball's like, yo, all right then, sure, pizza party. But Coffee's like, wait, what? We can't die? You know, it's like it's acceptance versus logicless, right? It's like the avenue of logic directly causes skepticism in the way that you can see it within Coffee, right? Like it's that same point. Wait, we can't die? You know, like it's like how is that possible? There's a logicness to it. It's like what the hell? But Hairball, which is more of a not a non-logical mind as much, they end up just being like, okay, you said we can't die? We can't die. They play by the rules. I mean, no, somebody who's thinking logically is like, hold on, why are the rules like this? Right? Like they're trying to understand the rules more than just accepting the rules, right? Which caused more of a mess. Same thing goes with like the pawn and the wine. I mean, of course, okay, well, wine isn't doing it. Wine is just nostalgia. Wine is just like, oh, hey, that was, I'm having fun. Let's stay here. Wrench is just sort of so unbelievably bewildered that they don't do anything. You know, pawn is like, okay, pawn is another logical mind. You know, they're just trying to go like, okay, we're gonna do something. Then pop-up wants them to arrive by. I don't know if pop-up is eventually gonna rope them in or if they're gonna get a break. So then we get to see Cone as well. Cone is in somewhere else. So Cone has left the world. What is the outside of the world? It seems like it's a binary landscape over on the circle. That is gonna be very interesting to see. I think the presumption is that they're probably getting TP'd back before anything happens, but the hole's gonna be there. Something interesting is gonna happen. You just know that's important. I mean, it's like it's important, but at the same time, what are you gonna do with that? You know, like it's that kind of thing where it's like, okay, Windows in a way is its own operating system, which means that like beyond that, you can have other things on a drive. You know, like you can like dual booting exists, for example. You know, so like in the way that Windows is this box that has all the files in it, you can technically have something outside of the Windows box in another drive, right? And then maybe Windows can access it, but Windows isn't necessarily like the be all end all point of a computer. Like you can have something outside of Windows, right? Such as a different computer. There's no way that they. Okay, I would find it extremely cool if they did this. To be honest, like if for some fucking reason we look over there, we're out there, and there's fucking the Ubuntu. There's fucking Ubuntu chilling the Ubuntu universe. Like the box is just there. Then that's a different world. That would be fire. There's no. This is not that. This is. I refuse to believe that this is the direction they're going. But like, to be fair, it would be absolutely fire if that happened. That would be sick. But I do that is completely so unbelievably far away from where this show's going. But it would be cool if they did. To the elimination, I mean, it's definitely gonna be contestant voting because otherwise we would have had a voting screen. You know, that's just kind of how it goes. They're gonna be contestant voting. However, that's fine because you know what the thing about contestant voting is. Okay, so contestant voting, right, is complicated to do. Why? Because you need to have somebody be eliminated. Makes sense, right? And a lot of time in object shows with contestant voting, it ends up feeling very empty sometimes because the characters don't have enough knowledge of each other to really play to really like play in a way where we can go, okay, yeah, eliminate this one, right? So, or like they either don't have enough intel to where we can consider their choice reasonable, or or they make the obvious decision based on the only amount of screen time we get and it ends up being bad. That's why, like, okay, because the deal about contestant voting in an actual reality show is that contestant voting in an actual reality show is much better because they're just people, right? Who are just regular people. So they interact with the others they have so much more time with each other than us. And that means that, of course, when we watch a reality show, we're getting the highlight reel, basically, whatever the opinion is. There is just so much more time for an opinion to form in real life, of course, than an object show, where sometimes, a lot of the time, it feels that the contestant voting is based on the entirety of two interactions that we see scripted, and then nothing else happens between the characters, right? Which means that there's so little knowledge there of the characters between each other that contestant voting ends up feeling very stale. However, this solves it. Why? Because they're just already friends. They're already friends. They have tons of experiences. You can tell they've been friends for years. They've had a falling out, but they've been friends for years. There is a connection there. They have built a set of cast that already knows each other properly, which means that, like, they know each other properly. They know each other well. They know what happened to each other. They know what each other is going through. They know their feelings. They know the ups, the downs. They know everything, which means that a contestant voting in this case actually makes sense because they are characters that know each other. So we're gonna have contestant voting that feels purposeful, that feels full, because these are characters that have interacted before. So it doesn't feel like the contestant voting is gonna be, oh yeah, I didn't like it when he said potato next to me. Like, it's gonna actually be purposeful. So this is contestant voting that I don't mind. Personally, I've always been a fan of viewer voting. I think that contestant voting, for the while that it exists, that is fine in these contexts. I do think that the soul of an object show immediately gets 40 to 50% taken out when you take out viewer voting, because that is one of the integral components. Out of the integral components of an object show, that is number 3. So you're taking out like 33% of the soul. However, when you add on, you can take away 33% of the soul of an object show, but you can add back 45%. Absolutely. And this show does that in just the way that it is, in the way that its setting is amazing, in the way that everything is. Even though it takes away that little bit of soul from not having a viewer voting, I think it adds it back by having such unbelievably in-depth characters, by having such an interesting situation, such an interesting vibe to it, such an interesting everything. And this is absolutely excellent. Both on an animational level, this is absolutely incredible. It's just amazing, I mean, yeah. Like, yet again, now, of course, we'll talk about first of all, who's getting eliminated? Okay, I mean, if it's obviously Cone. Obviously, Cone is getting eliminated in this situation. I don't know exactly what style of voting it is, to be honest. Like, it's going to be contested voting because you don't have a voting screen. But I don't know exactly what style of voting is going to be. It could be that the team votes each other out. It could be the other people maybe vote each other out. But either way, in any situation here, Cone gets out. Because, I mean, duh. Nobody likes Cone. That's the joke. Cone's gonna get out. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens to Cone when eliminated. Because last time they got zipped up, is Cone's gonna get zipped up until the freaking world's over, and then they end up getting sent back? Because, like, what in the world? Is time even passing? That's another interesting question. Because some people, as you can tell, like Pawnee and stuff, is like, oh, yo, we gotta go, But it's like, hold on, wait, this is interesting, no? Because it's like, is time even passing? Because it certainly feels like it's passing, but we're in the computer world. Like, the sky never goes dark in the computer world, right? Which means that, I don't know, where time's passing. And interesting, by the way, one of the most interesting things to me, you know what it is? Where the fuck's the taskbar? We're in a computer. Where the hell's the taskbar? I haven't seen it. Because that would be crucial information. A start menu, a clock, anything. Where is the component? Where are the components of a computer? We have the icons, which means that we are in a desktop. That's basically what I'm referring to. We're in a desktop. We have icons. Where is everything else? Where is the taskbar? Because we get a global view of the thing. We don't see a taskbar. We don't see a cursor. But I mean, nobody's using it, so I guess I don't understand not having a cursor. But where is the taskbar? We've got to have a taskbar, bro. Like, Where did it go? I'm just saying this because the time is an important thing to know. Like, if time, like, is time passing at the same length here than it is IRL in their world? Because then we could have a problem, right? If you imagine a show like 15 people, 15 apps or whatever, right? Then we end up having a fucking nightmare, right? Because it was like 15 days minimum, and it's like, hold on, fucking the whole world is gonna be like lost kids, right? But then it's like, or is time not passing? Everything's fine. Are we doing like, like, what is happening here? So that is absolutely one of the important things. How would they be able to find out the time? Taskbar, like, surely that's got to be there somewhere. There is no way. I refuse to believe there's no taskbar. But anyways, yes, that is what I think. Now, as a global opinion on the show, this show's amazing. As far as this episode is amazing, extremely good, extremely fire. We get to see relation. I'm always a little. I think I'm a little scared when shows like this have an obviously main character, cause it's like, okay, we are doing a competition show, but like, in a way, I really hope Wine doesn't just win because they're the main character that gets the most screen time. It's like that would be because that just gives vibes of plot armor when the character that's obviously the main character wins the thing as the main character. Like, and I'm not a big fan of it. It removes a bit of the thrill from it because you can have this ultra big story while also, incorporating failing into it, right? So yeah, but either way, the show's amazing. Again, you do have to remember a lot of these new shows, they are inspired by other shows. So I can just directly say I don't know what this is inspired off of. I don't know. There's probably other shows that have a similar style, maybe, that have a similar style of cast, a style of format, any of that stuff. I think one of the most highly, I know we've talked about one's not exactly like this, but I think because this is a competition show, I think one of the most acclaimed ones that I haven't watched is, I think, The Nightly Manor, which was made by, who made The Nightly Manor? Was it Allen Animations? The Nightly Manor. Let me check for a moment. Yeah, it was made by Allen Animations. Um, I know that this, I think, is one of those highly acclaimed shows that has had some episodes. So in a way, it could be inspired. You can check. I mean, you can kind of see maybe in the way that some certain tags, like sometimes like checking tags, because tags have been fired other than the BFDI and II, which of course get their own tags. You can see kind of by what else is tagged, if there's ever something. In this case, there isn't really anything else tagged there because you get to see BFDI, II. It's time for the nomadic bat. It's basically the most popular ones, right? So in general, it ends up being pretty standard. But other than that, I don't know the inspiration, so I don't know exactly how 100% unique this is. But in a context where this is original, fully, this is epic. Everybody watch it. Go tell everybody to watch it. Go tell Johnson from across the street to watch. Go tell Sarah from the 14th contact in your phone. I'm sure she would love to know. I'm telling you, bro, this show was epic. All right. Huge good jobs with the animation. The music selection was really good. Even sound effects and stuff, like when they fucking drop down into the internet, like the fucking Delta. I love this Delturn sound effect that played when they drop down into the internet, kind of like how that happens when they drop down into the cyber world. That's great. But so yeah, there's just so many cool things. I've jumped on too much. This show, that was a fire. That was just fire. Little 40 minutes that I saw. As you can tell, I've already overrun the length of the episode by fucking nearly half of it. I don't know, nearly want to have the episode play. I think the act one of the second run through of the episode is already over. So it's like, I'm absolutely going to start talking now. But this show's amazing. Everybody go watch it. I hope for the best. I hope Ubuntu shows up. I hope to learn more about some characters. I really want to know what's up with Light. Because Light was super interesting. Light definitely my interesting. That group of Light and Straw Hat, just, I love them. And yeah, I hope to see more of the show finally come up. I don't know how often the show's going to release. I mean, if episodes are like this, probably every fucking millennium. But yeah, unlike other shows, this isn't a big cast, so I can actually see this show eventually maybe happening. You know, I love a show that I can see potential in because it's not monstrously large cast. All right, let's go to the next thing. The next show that we're going to be talking about is called the 136ly Object Show. So there's this one little channel called Nothing Much Just Being Wise, or a bunch of a name that's upside down. I think it's called O Gamer Green 39. No, 36. But they ended up making the show called the 136ly Object Show with 2 episodes. They're all relatively small. And the first video, I guess, sort of, they found its way to YouTube and they're getting 6,000 views, which puts it high up on the list in terms of things that I should watch. Even though it's not exactly up there yet, I think I'm going to skip the queue a little bit and just cover it because it's rather small and I don't know when else I will talk about it. This seems like a pretty good opportunity. It's got 2 episodes. Episode 1 is called How Long Do You Think This Episode Is? Let's watch it. And then, of course, we'll talk about episode 2. Let's go. Alright, I just watched the first episode of the 136ly Object Show, which I guess is the 1 minute 36-secondly Object Show. Basically, yeah, that is a video that is length 136. It happens to apparently be taken in one take, although I do doubt that it's actually one take. There's no way this is one take. Well, know why? Not because the take is good. It's just it's because, like, I swear to God, I've heard the voice overlaid in the voice. I swear to God, that's actually happened. You know? That, like, wait, nah, like, surely. But, yeah, this is a one-take show that I think is trying very hard to sound like it's one take. Like, it, like, you know, being like, oh, I don't know, do this, do a thing, welcome to the show, that's a show, because I am in the show, right? Like, you see, like, there's not really much of a if anything happened, like we're specifically trying to do a scuffed one take. But it's like, no, we don't gotta do a scuffed one take. What a voice! What? Whoa! I just made a sound. We don't gotta do a scuffed one take. We can do a regular one take, all right? But I mean, it's just obviously a joke show, right? So again, there's not much to say about it. There's no contest. I mean, there are contestants, but there's no contestants, you know, in the regular rhetoric of it. There's just other green gamer greens. And yeah, the episode actually ends itself after 49 actually not about after about a minute, and then the final 36 seconds are entirely just for the voting screen. Their final words that are said is my Discord is GamerGreen136, which, I mean, good information. What do you want me to friend you? I don't know, but I'm glad to know that info. I mean, I don't necessarily mind this as a one-off video. Right, because okay, sure, funny little video for a show that's not real, right? Aha, gag. But how the hell this has an episode 2? What? Like, what is the second episode gonna add to this episode? I don't know. What is the second episode gonna add to the 136ly Object Show timeline? I don't know, but I have to go find out immediately. So the second episode is called This Video is Above 136, angry face emoji. Let's watch it. Let's talk about it. Okay, I've just watched episode 2 of the 136ly Object Show. So, okay, to be fair, right? I mean, the first part of this episode is, of course, the gag, but the elimination is obvious, right? Like, the contestants are all Gamer Green. So, will Gamer Green get eliminated? Or will Gamer Green get eliminated? You know, like, which one of the Gamer Greens is gonna get Gamer Green into the green, you know? But, so yeah, I mean, that's the joke. Eventually, Gamer Green ends up getting eliminated with 1,000,000,000,000,000,000.1 votes. Now, I ain't gonna lie. That felt fair until the point one. That was harsh. But you know what? To be fair, to this challenge, okay? To be fair, I'm actually gonna take the opportunity of this show, right? Talk about something very interesting. So, I think one of the most interesting things about object shows are prizes. Why? Because prizes in object shows have always been this neglected little thing of them, where a lot of the time the prize of a show, the literal reason why the show is there, is so unbelievably pointless that it is treated as a gag in many serious object shows and not important. When it's like, it's such a big deal because this show actually showcases what that is like in a way to have a prizeless show, because you see it. It's that's what it is doing. It is taking, like, the idea, press the button, but the contestants are like, we're not here for anything. We're here to compete, but we're not competing for any prize. There's nothing at stake. So we can test the system, breaking the show, right? The prizelessness of it literally breaks the show because it didn't have, like a proper format, which makes it now too long because the contestants have actively broken the show by not participating, pressing the button, which I think makes a really interesting dilemma. I think this is one of the things that personally I find the most unfortunate with a lot of object shows, is because BFB had this joke of making a nonsensical prize, right? The prize, OBFDI, right? However, so many shows want to take on the mantra of a BFB that they proceed to also do the same joke of not having a prize that makes sense. Like, for example, in WBS that I watched the other day, the prize was 2 boxes. What does that mean? I don't know, but everyone went crazy over it. Everyone went crazy over that, right? Which I think it's an unfortunate little thing with object shows. I really wish more of them had a prize that, like, there's a genuine reason to want it rather than just being a guy that everybody's so enamored with nothing. Because at least with a BFDI, you could theorize, you could speculate. It was a prize that, it was something. It could have been anything. To be honest, it could have been the season. It could have been, like, literally you get to host BFDI. It didn't end up being that, but it could have been. So it gave idea. But a lot of prizes just are nothing, right? So yeah. Okay, that's a little note I wanted to say to take advantage of this genuinely interesting point brought up by the show, that the contestants don't need to do a challenge if there's no reason for them to do a challenge. The host here, well, which is the same guy, all the other guys, end up putting in a prize, right? And then everybody else ends up going for the button. But, like, in general, it is a thing. Like that, I think it brought up an interesting point, and I wanted to speculate on this interesting point to cause a little bit of a discussion, because it's obviously a joke show, right? It's a joke show that doesn't take itself too seriously. There's not too much to analyze about it. I mean, it's kind of fun, I guess, for a bit, but I can't really see how many more episodes we can do with this format while still feeling fresh. So I'm not feeling too good, honestly, about the possibility of this show getting too much of spreading its wings too far, because it's gonna need to switch itself up a bit to make jokes that are gonna feel fresh. It did get itself a lucky little algorithmic boost, 6,000 views. Not many object shows get 6,000 views. A lot of the stuff we have covered here today is actually on the upper echelon of views, right? But I don't know if it can take its opportunity quite well enough to deliver something fresh, especially with its one take format and Gamer Green versus Gamer Green jokes. So I'm not sure if it's going to be able to make it too far, but I hope the best for it. And in case there are any other episodes of the 136 Clear Object Show, I will check them out to see what is done with the concept. All right, next. Alright, the next episode that we're going to be taking a look at is the second episode of Object Hateness. So, all the way back near the beginning of the series, we took a look at Object Hateness, the show from ItsBluezYT, and of course, we came up with the shows from all the creators, including ItsBluezYT. Last time, if you remember, Microphone randomly selected teams using ChatGPT. They ended up doing a very long race to the finish, and it turned out that one of the teams ended up being up for elimination. I don't remember who I predicted to get out, to be honest. It's actually been quite a while. Maybe Phony. We're going to have to see, but the episode ended up getting us a pretty decent amount of views. Team B ended up being up for elimination. I'll be curious to see how this episode is going to be. It is longer than episode 1, which gives me some hope. Let's go watch it, and we'll discuss it. Let's go. Okay, so I have just resumed from watching the second episode of Object Hateness, which is titled Sleep to Lose. So we start off here with a little bit of a fun. Sure, it's a little bit of a fun scene. Banana, who is just kind of the hater style character, you know, they're like, yeah, you suck, everybody sucks. They come in with their fellow trolling buddy Hammer. No, their fellow trolling buddy Pickaxe. And they end up trolling Battery by showing them an AI picture of their mother if deceased, which makes them jump off the cliff because they just so happen to be standing on the cliffside of that very cliff. Which I must say, look, it's a blocky level plank for sure. I don't mind that one, but yeah, I like a phone. I think gets thrown down there as well for just daring to dispute the freaking the cups. Anyways, we ended up having 3 votes. No, 4 votes. Salt Lamp ended up being eliminated with 2. I'm gonna be honest. I'm so surprised that it was not a 1-1-1-1 tie. That looked like it. That looked so clear. You know, because there were so many options, but yet so little to base off the information from, that I'm genuinely shocked that a character even got multiple votes. But yeah, good job. So Lamp ends up turning into a statue, which is the punishment for being eliminated. And the other character, I like the scene. I like the scene with the hand reaching out at the button and the other character getting surprised. Some aren't as surprised as others, but yep, we end up getting, and I mean, it's a pretty basic monochromatic to see the statue version of Salt Lamp, but yeah, at least we did it correctly, you know. I gotta give props where props are due. I don't think they're too, I don't think this show's too professional, so anything that it does right, I'm absolutely gonna sing its praises. Alright, this challenge is the Awake-a-thon. Alright, so one of the things which I criticized the most last time in Object Hateness was the fact that that challenge was a race, right, which is a very action-packed challenge. We had a very action-packed challenge with very little, like, you know, with this flip book style that didn't allow for action to be displayed, which means that we kind of just skipped over the entire challenge. This challenge is an Awake-a-thon. Simply be awake for as long as possible, right? Which, as far as, okay, as a challenge concept, completely based to itself, I think it's fine. For this show, I think it's actually pretty solid, because you don't need to do that much. You just need to show a character awake, and then they fall asleep. All you gotta do is close their eyes, you know, like, and then it makes sense. So as far as for the capability of the show, I think doing an Awake-a-thon, way better challenge content than the last one. Absolutely, for sure. However, I am obviously going to point out, if I'm not mistaken, isn't this just the second episode of Total Drama? Right? I swear. Is that the second episode of Total Drama? Yeah, the big sleep, right? Because it's just like, that's just what it is. You know? Like, if I'm not mistaken. Because it just ends up being the challenges that they're all sleeping, right? So, yeah, let me check. The big sleep, the 2 sweet in a wake-a-thon so you can stay awake long. Yeah, exactly. You see, like, it isn't a unique challenge, and especially because I know that ItsBluezYT has sometimes made some Total Drama inspired videos. Yeah, this challenge is just pretty much ripped from it. I don't mind that much, but I am of course going to point out this is a Total Drama challenge, my G. You know, they're not your unique concept, but all right. Um, and I also don't think that it was done too well. Like, we had some interesting scenes that were pretty solid, like with the painted eyes, like with the banana going to sleep and Pickaxe awaking them because they're friends, right? But in general, we have a couple of scenes that are pretty solid. However, eventually at the end of it, it's just everybody's asleep and we don't get to find out much about any of them. Like, half of the contestants we don't get to see in this episode because they're just not there. Like, we don't get to see them in this episode until they've suddenly fallen asleep. But like, let us see them falling asleep, right? And I understand there's so many scenes and it's gonna take time, but like, if you're not willing to give screen time to the contestants in your show, don't make them contestants in your show. All right? That makes sense, no? Even the winner of the challenge, which is Bag, right? Bag wins the challenge for Team A. We don't see Bag in this episode, which is insane, no? The last person awake, the winner of the challenge, the winner. We don't see the winner in this episode. Like, what? That is genuinely unbelievable, no? I swear that's like insane. But like, okay. Um, yeah, eventually they were gonna read the history of the letter A, the book. A, the best book ever about letter A. And then I like I like the fact that I like the fact that Cup just was like, sorry, I'm out. I do not want to. No, but then freaking self-inflicts themselves to sleep immediately. That's kind of fun. But eventually Team 2 is up for elimination again. Have we learned much about Team 2? Not really. I mean, Battery, we've learned that they've fallen off a cliff. The phone, it was pretty nice. So I've seen a few clips, but Cup also seemed to be the mug, right? They were one of the last ones awake. The ice cream, I guess, had a line. We don't really get to see much Nintendo Switch. I mean, I think you get to see one line Nintendo Switch. You don't get to see the camera, you don't get to see the notepads. I'm expecting one of them get eliminated. But, like, yeah, in general, this show, just like how I pointed out before, has a lack of letting the challenge play on. It shows like 10% of the challenge, right? And then it just cuts away to the end of it, right? And it's like, you just gotta show more, you know? Like, for us to feel enthralled in any type of challenge here and any type of video here in these videos, like, you've just got to give us a better perspective of the challenge itself, you know? Like, you just gotta, because otherwise there's very little to follow. You know, you can't get attached to characters if you don't see them. You can't really like have a fun time watching if there's nothing to watch, right? Like, it's that's the main critique. You know, just you gotta show more of the challenge. Give more time to the challenge, and you're gonna be better off. You know, you're gonna be better off. You're gonna have something way better. But we've got to have a bigger focus on the challenge. That's all I've got to say about Object Hateness Episode 2, Sleep to Lose. Let's go next. The next show that we're going to be taking a look at is the second episode of The Dark Secret Behind Dream Resort. So yet again, a couple of weeks ago, we took a look at The Dark Secret Behind Dream Resort Episode 1, which was, a brand new release. Which I found rather interesting. So, yeah, just as a reminder, in the last episode, we ended up having a screwdriver appear in our collection of characters to host a show for Dream Resort, which is, apparently a very good thing, a very good place. They ended up doing a tightrope challenge, and the first 3 people to get by ended up being team leaders, and we're gonna pick the teams. You don't get to pick the teams yet, though. They were gonna pick the teams in this episode, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, we are going to have to see in episode 2 here. So yeah, I don't know, I found it really interesting. Apparently this Dream Resort has a dark secret because that's the name of the series. But yeah, let's watch episode 2. It's titled Cheaters and Never Prosper. Let's go. Alright, I have just wrapped up watching The Dark Secret Behind Dream Resort Episode 2, Cheaters Never Prosper. So, we resume immediately from the end of the last episode with the team picking process, where we have Ice Cream, Shoe, and Vinyl as the three members of our team selection process. So, Ice Cream ends up forming Team Ice-tastic with pretty much just a bunch of her friends and stuff. That team has got got positive vibes bubbling all across it. I'm not gonna lie. That team is the power of friendship express. They will definitely do things for sure. Because there's so little working against that team. Um, it's rather solid. In the meanwhile, we have Vinyl, which of course does is much more of a like hater style character. At least they hate CD. So their picks are a little bit more on the random end. But they end up still forming an okay team. They're called the CD Hate Club. Then eventually, Shu, which doesn't actually pick anybody because they can't speak, just ends up being left with the other four, right? Just the rest of them, which is Soccer Ball and Box, which remember are friends, if I'm not mistaken. Boulder, which is really dislike Shu for not being capable to speak Snowball Core. And then CD, which, being left out of the CD Hate Club puts them in here. So, the if I'm not mistaken, the last team is called Nothing because Shu doesn't actually give it a name. So yeah. The challenge ends up being simply a general quiz, a general knowledge test, which we do actually end up seeing the test itself. It has a couple of questions which are maybe mildly complicated. It has a couple of questions that are like general knowledge, to be honest. It was a pretty solid quiz. For sure. It was a multiple choice and everything. I didn't try to solve the answers because some of them took time, but like in general, it was all right. Team Nothing ends up deciding to try to go steal, to go cheat because I mean they're not. You think Boulder is gonna actually do anything? Shu just quietly does the test while everybody else tries to copy the test, steal it off laptop because we know that laptop is pretty smart, right? Um, and in fact they are. They do end up doing quite well. In fact, the power of Friendship Express, but which is going to be the name I will give to this team, ends up just absolutely acing. If I'm not mistaken, they get a 50 out of 50, right? No, they get 47 out of 50. Yeah, you see, by just kind of being buddies, you know? By just like being buddies, being like, yo, guys, what do we do? Like they just kind of help each other out. And it ends up being quite a solid team. The CD Hate Club also ends up being relatively well. I think they got 50 out of 50. So it would have been hard to get up there anyways, right? Because you only three wrong was like if you got four wrong answers, you were already cooked, right? So in general, that is quite. I mean, it was quite a complicated situation for the Nothing team, anyways. But yeah, the other teams aced it because while you were taking a general knowledge quiz, they never was a rule that you couldn't just talk. Like at the end of the day, it's a team challenge. Even if you guys all have an individual quiz, there's nothing to actively separate you. I don't think Screwdriver said no, don't talk to each other. Like yeah, the freaking Ice Cream and the buddies over on Ice Tacit, they were helping each other out, talking about the answers. Laptop was like, oh, don't worry, I'll help you solve the answers because I know, right? Like in general, they were for sure just a team effort, which the Nothing team, I mean, they did all correctly cheat off the puzzle, but they didn't correctly figure it out. They just used the letters instead of picking the answers, which is really dumb. Because, I mean, like, if it was a situation where the actual answers themselves are where like the questions are a bit more nebulous, like no, but this multiple choice quiz is so unbelievably not complicated that is like, bro, what it's not that difficult. Also, hold on, wait a minute, wait, but each team's test had different versions, so all the answers were the same, but were just rearranged. That's not true. That's not true. Bro forgot to rearrange them. I have them on the screen right here. This is exactly the same. The version number has changed, but the actual answers, no, they're in the same order. Ain't no way we forgot to actually shuffle to rearrange the answers so that in the animation. That's so sad. That's an oof. I'm gonna say that's an oof right there. Forgot to rearrange the answers so they just actually are the same on both papers. Damn. Yeah, no, that one's tough. that, that one is tough, I must say. That one's an error. But oh well, it happens for sure. Shu ended up getting a 10 out of 10. Screwdriver keeps implying that, yo, maybe Shu should be the leader. Okay, to be fair to this leader shenanigan, right? Is that like, I understand that Boulder is not a good leader, right? But Boulder does have a point that Shu isn't exactly that much of a leader. Because it's like, okay, hold on. What is Shu gonna do? You know, like, okay, this guy's obviously very much, puny. Like, oh, Shu's not good because he's non-speaking. Right, but they do have a point. Shu isn't a good leader because Shu isn't a character that speaks, you know? But it's not even a non-speaking character in the sense like Teardrop, for example. Teardrop gestures and does everything, can lead with gestures. But Shu doesn't even gesture. Shu just is, you know? Like, for example, when we were picking team members, like, Shu could just point, no? Surely you can point. Use your leg and point, you know? Point at somebody, right? Sure, like, you can do that. You can point at somebody. You know, that's what characters would like to do all the time. Have you seen like tennis ball? That's literally what they do on the daily. Like, but nope, no pointing. Which means that like even on the quiz, it's like okay, like what? Were you all just gonna look at Shu, like, or maybe try to copy off Shu and Shu just marks it down? It's like okay, everybody else go mark it out. You know, like I don't know what the leadership that we were gonna do with Shu is. So I understand Boulder on that aspect, but also nah, bro. Anyways, the elimination is Stone, CD, Soccer Ball, Box, or Shu. The obvious eliminated contestant here should be Stone, because Stone not only... I mean, okay, actually, I don't think Stone threw, because if you think about it, the person who technically threw the challenge, if I'm not mistaken, would be CD. CD, I think... No, who cheated? Like, who found the answers of the test? No, Box. Yeah, so it's Box's fault that they misunderstood the test, right? Because they saw the answers, they should have known, right? However, it's Stone's fault that they did that idea in the first place. But everybody else did just follow them. But yeah, Stone eventually did that. That idea was suggested. It's Stone's fault. Stone is the mean character, one of the most obvious mean characters I've seen in an object show. And in general, you know, they're just hate Shu for no reason, who actually did well and is just minding their own business. So Stone gives me vibes of obvious eliminated contestant. Interesting voting system where you literally just say the name in the comments. Like, there's no voting numbers or anything. I mean, there's not too many comments, so it's probably going to be relatively easy for it to be counted, but I'd absolutely recommend, considering this is an object show, which in my opinion has potential to bloom quite a bit, because this animation style, it's unique but solid at its job, you know? So like it could definitely prosper a bit more than the way it currently is. I would maybe suggest implementing a voting system that's a little bit more easier to sift through, because I'm not sure if just writing the name down in the comments, which is going to be alongside a regular comment and stuff. Imagine if somebody just comments about a character saying their name, but not necessarily because they want to eliminate them, just because they're talking, right? Just because they're having a conversation. It's not going to be very good, right? But yeah, for now it's fine. Show's pretty solid. I like this episode. This challenge is pretty nice. In general, this show kind of has a more relaxed vibe to it. I can't even lie. Screwdriver speaks, but very non-loudly. And other than Stone and Vinyl, like the amount of chiller characters in the show, they're really not there. There's so many more chill vibes in this show than usual. There's not a lot of drama going on, and it's a pretty relaxed experience to just watch it. So yeah, it's honestly rather enjoyable. All right, that's all. Let's move on. Next. All right, and the next object show that we're going to be taking a look at, it is going to be episode 1, all right, of THOS. So THOS is a show created by Ray Adventures, right? Now you're wondering, hold up, why are we covering Created Away right now? Yeah, however, this was a request, all right, because Ray Adventures is the friend of Square One, which is a creator that we've covered a bunch of times because of their one take object show, and Ray Adventures actually is featured as in the one take object show as both a recommended character and also a production member, that helps makes the episodes, which means that yeah, and we had a request, and even though usually I tend to keep requests, for those request specials, request revelations is what I've called them usually. This one was so minimal. I literally just got asked to review a 1 minute episode, right? Episode 2 is coming out pretty soon, but like in general, I got asked to review a 1 minute video. I'll take a look at it, and then eventually we can take a look at episode 2 when it releases, and then we're more fine, all right, especially because it was a request from a creator as well, because the creator recommended that I watch. Like, I think that it's worth it to check it out, right? So yeah, we'll take a look at this 1 minute video. And see what's up. It's also a Halloween object show, but again, bro, we're so late to Halloween anyways that, I mean, why not? Better Halloween in November than Halloween in December. That's all I'll say. All right, let's watch FOSS 1, a Halloween special just for you. All right, I just watched episode 1 of THOS, and I got it. That was chaos 1 million. To be fair to it, it has a way of keeping its energy high. That was 1 minute. That okay, so those movies, right, where you give like a baby, like a 5-year-old, like a piece of candy, and they get apparently the sugar rush of the century, and for like the next 5 minutes of the movie they're just running around going insane, and that's just like the movie now, right? I don't think that's the situation that's ever happened in a movie, but pretend it was. um that's what this feels like, okay? It feels like a sugar rush, but you know what, they eat candy in Halloween, so sure. Like a pumpkin says, oh my god, it's Halloween, so everybody goes crazy. We have our contestants, which are the a pumpkin bucket, a ghost, a skull emoji, a freaking candy. Yeah, that makes sense. Two gumballs, yellow gumball and blue gumball. And then we got a candy corn as well, a gravestone. And then we also summon a Ouija board demon for some reason, which is fun, by the way, that you can just do that. Like, they're just chilling. Imagine the demon is just chilling on their room watching TV, and then they get summoned. And like, can anybody do that? Can anybody summon them at any time? It's just like they're just chilling, and it's like, oh shit, I'm in Venezuela now. Like, what's good? That's kind of fun. But then yeah, we have a couple of gags that are kind of goofy. I think the gumball eats the gumball. What the hell's going on? And then we have a host. I don't know who this is. I could not tell you. They're an algebraic square that's not really a square with emo hair. So all right, they're I don't know. I mean, presumably they might host an object show because they're an algebraic and that's what they tend to do. But they don't say anything. They just say, what did they say? I quote, "I love pencil sharpeners." So I don't really know if they're gonna host an object show, but the presumption is that they're gonna host an object show in another episode. Was this released on Halloween? Yeah, it was released on Halloween. Well, that's a fun episode. I mean, it should have probably released on the 30th if you think about it. Because what do you mean Halloween's coming soon when it is Halloween? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But yeah, I should have probably waited till episode 2, but whatever. We'll just look at episode 2 when it's time for episode 2. I was asked to review episode 1, not episode 2. So if I had waited for episode 2, I would have been incorrect. Technically would not have fulfilled the request in time. Alright, that's all I'm saying. But yeah, I mean, it's high energy, but I guess there's not too much to discuss about it. I'm curious about how an actual episode where the object show is doing an object show, if it would be like that level of energy, because that would be pretty fucking insane. I presumably they would have to quiet it down a little bit for the sake of, you know, having a challenge happen, but maybe not. And second thing that I'm wondering, are the plush videos this energy as well? Because if the plush videos are this energy, then you're just throwing plushes around the room at that point. I hope that's not what you're doing. because that would be really high energy. But yeah, I mean, that's all. It's cool. We'll have to see how the object show part of this object show ends up taking place in future episodes, if they're gonna keep up the energy, if we're gonna slow it back down. Honestly, both of them would be cool, to be honest. The animation's pretty solid. It's flip a clip, but it's a pretty smooth flip a clip, which is quite rare to see. So yeah, that's all I've really got to say about it. Alright, and then the final object show that we're going to be taking a look at is called Trophy Takedown. So, I've decided to take this opportunity to wrap up the requests from show creators themselves, right? Because, look, I appreciate all requests, and I will absolutely, you know, eventually take a look at all requests. However, if a show creator does a request, they are mildly higher on the list than a non-show creator, because of course they are a show creator. I've talked to them, I respect them. I've literally talked about their shows for multiple minutes at a time, and Balloon Animations, which is known for creating Magnificent Madness, as well as the Silly Saturdays contest, which, by the way, has had a second episode, which we're not looking at yet. I've decided to leave that to another day. Has recommended me a show from Blood Drop Animations, all right? Called Trophy Takedown, or TT for short. It's had 5 episodes, but they're already short, around 1 minute long. So we're gonna do it, I guess. When a show has episodes that are around 1 minute long, we usually call it a speed round. So I guess we'll do a speed round of these episodes and see what I think of this show. The creator themselves has also hopped on to send me a link to the show, because I couldn't find it originally, because it's called Trophy Takedown, but its title doesn't actually have Trophy Takedown in it. So when you search Trophy Takedown object show, nothing actually appears, because like that's not a thing. You know, it's called TT, but TT object show is too vague. You know, it's kind of it's that little mess where it's like TT is too broad of an acronym to actually show up or anything, but Trophy Takedown isn't in the title, so it's not going to show up, right? So, me personally, already immediate recommendation is name your series Trophy Takedown fully, because otherwise it's not going to show up in search. But, yeah. Starting off with TT1, Blabbermouth. Alright, there's episode 1 of TT, Blabbermouth. So we have here a host that gets very annoyed when somebody interrupts them. Well, Ice Cream wasn't really interrupting. They were just Ice Cream was just minding their own business. Blame the cameraman who freaking zoomed out. like, yeah, we have ourselves an intro, which is a pretty solid intro. In fact, the animation of the show general is pretty solid. I mean, it's very flip a clip, of course, and you know it's flip a clip, but it ends up pretty solid. I don't really know what's up with the slime fella. Because I feel like a bunch of these characters sometimes I feel like they have a background to them in certain cases, but in general it ends up fine. No challenge actually, because I don't know, because apparently everybody was annoying to them, so everybody's up for elimination. The slime fucking melts the guy. What are you, acid? What are you? Are you an acid slime? How did you even do that? like, oh, I don't know. We could do that. What? Except the hand. But anyways, everyone's still up for elimination. Anyways, I'm low-key surprised that slime didn't just get out right there. And then you can't just murder the host and be. And how do you murder the host and go off scot-free? I mean, I don't know who would get eliminated here, because of course half the characters didn't really even speak. Like, I think GD Cube didn't really speak. I don't know if Stop Sign spoke. I'm gonna say the acid sign gets out because they were mean to the host, and the host technically had a point that they did ruin his intro. So maybe that, or Ice Cream for having interrupted, although they were just minding their own business. I don't know. We'll have to see. My prediction is them, but I mean, I couldn't really tell you. We'll have to find out here in episode 2, Slime Family Reunion. Let's go. Alright, that was TT2, Slime Family Reunion. So what do I think of that? That episode was okay. It did seem a little bit Okay, so for being such a fast episode, it did seem a little bit like it maybe didn't exactly have its point on like consistent basis, because it's got first 30 seconds is mostly just intros, then we have elimination, which takes quite a while. The Poisonese cousins are the prize, which is fun. I like how Poisony says hi to their cousin. I think that's pretty fun. You end up having a tie between the stop sign and the I think the measuring cup. So they end up fighting. Stop sign gets fucking choked to death, whatever the hell that means. To because you're a stop sign. How the hell that happened? To the thing, and then the challenge is to find the stick. Nope, never mind. It's burned. Challenge is to jump pretty high. They jump quite high. I must admit, okay, so they do a massive leap into the sky, right? So they do that, and then they drop back down and land on a cactus, 5 feet, and then the cup measure just jumps and goes 7 feet. How now? Like, hold on. How is it that they did this massive leap into the sky and then got 5 feet? Like they landed on the cat, or did they land on, or was is the joke that they didn't jump that high, but it looks like they jumped that high because it did look like they jumped pretty high. Maybe they didn't, but it looked like they jumped pretty high. But okay, Poison is safe by, I guess, levitating themselves up, using their strengths to their strength. And then the other fella's up for elimination. Who's getting eliminated? I don't know. Probably the cup measure because they murdered someone. You can't be doing that. Let's watch episode 3, which is titled Go, Go, Go. Let's go. Oh, wait. Oh, okay, hold on. I just watched episode 3. 5 weeks? That's not possible. Hold on. Voting ends in 5 weeks. There is no way. What? 5 weeks? Okay. No. Anyways, you see, the elimination on this episode is much more like how I was expecting the elimination for the show to go. Because, okay, so how I usually think about these shows is, let's imagine the show like this. Usually, I consider the time that it has to be realistic. Because usually with a lot of shows, I don't mind the longer elimination ceremony. It's just I consider each show as having a real estate of time, right? Because it's like, realistically, is an episode of this show ever going to be 4 minutes? No, not really, because, we're limited, right, by what we can do. So that means that we only have our 1 minute of real estate, which means that when we only have this 1 minute of real estate, I expect there to just be less time devoted to eliminations and intros and stuff. Which even then, this intro's pretty long. It's like a 12-second or intro. But either way, I mean, I don't really mind the intro, but the elimination ceremony gets sped around. The hat fella ends up getting out, actually, surprisingly, I'd say. But yeah, with 4 votes, they are out. Then we end up having the challenge, which is to get to a tree. We end up having a bunch of people running, like Geometry Dash Cube, the plastic bag. I keep calling it cup holder because they really do, but the plastic bag, which also makes sense, is getting freaking attacked by the poisony. However, eventually they get stopped by the police, where the police ends up singing in the way. But it does allow Plastic Bag to make it to the end, so it was a sacrifice, so worth it. And in the meanwhile, I have no idea where GD but GD is getting scammed, bro. They're not even like allowed to do challenges, bro. They're getting absolutely cooked. Like, come on, my poor little GD Cube isn't even on the screen half the time, bro. Like, come on. to my G. Well, alright. That was cool. I prefer that episode to the other ones. Let's go with episode 4. Wait, what? Alright, that is episode 4. Yeah, this is the speed that I'd expect these shows to go. Honestly, this is much more like the speed I'd expect. It's pretty much a 1 minute object show if you think about it. I mean, every episode has been within that range of 1 minute, except for the second one, which was in fact a little bit longer because it had that longer elimination that required the extra time, right? But now that we've shortened ourselves down, we get to the 1 minute range, which is what I'd expect. I mean, I prefer episodes that are longer, of course, but it's a matter of what is possible, and if this is possible, this is what we do. So they get turned into, I guess, metal, and the challenge is to eliminate them, to eliminate Poisony, who was out, by the way, which, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So then a bunch of people try. It's not exactly a great performance. The police get thrown out there. The GD cube gets thrown out there. Ice cream just gets fucking eaten alive. Oh my god. And then, however, it just a plastic bag ends up murdering I guess, the friend of Slimy, which ends up having no slime. Are you called Slimy or Poisony? I don't remember. I think you're called Poisony, but you were called Slimy in episode 2, at least in the title. So that's why I was a little confused. But yeah, you end up getting out. The friends we made along the way end up having a panic attack. So good job, Plastic Bag. You win by not really doing that much. Everybody else is yet again trying to be eliminated. But GD Cube, I mean, I guess attempts to challenge this, and we get to see them attempt to challenge. They don't exactly do a great performance of it, but you know, they certainly are doing a challenge. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I'd probably expect them to get out because they are really not doing a masterful gambit here. Like I have seen better performances in history, I must say. All right, episode 5 is called Finale Finalists. Well, let's find out who they are because I don't think it's the last episode. Let's go. And there it is, the actual finale of Trophy Takedown. I'm surprised that this is the finale, I'm gonna be honest, because this seemed like a pretty clear situation where you just put it up to the viewers. No, I mean, viewers have had the opportunity to vote on eliminations and all of that stuff. So as it goes with an object show at the end of it, they're all up for voting, and then you vote who wins. No, I thought that was what was gonna happen because like it's not like we exactly have a challenge that determines a winner here. Like we just have a fucking television that tells you the winner. So I mean, at that point, like surely you can just put them up for voting. No, I feel like that would make more sense. Right? Because at least then the viewers are satisfied. Because in this case, I don't know who's satisfied. Because if you think about it, it's that you're not necessarily satisfied because you didn't have rights any like a winner properly, you know, like I mean you decided who won but you didn't do anything to make them win. You the viewers aren't necessarily satisfied because they didn't vote the winner, right? So maybe somebody wanted Dashy, be like, oh no, I didn't like Plastic Bad, but they're all safe, right? So it's like just because Plastic Bad was winning the challenge, it doesn't make them a fan favorite, so maybe they didn't deserve to win. And then, you know, just in general, it's maybe not a great. It's an underwhelming finale also because there's not big reveal. It's just, you know, like I would have personally put them up for voting, especially in a show like this where voting has been an integral part of it always. So I don't know. I would have made that extra episode. Maybe even a little bit time to, you know, have the characters banter a little bit. We haven't actually seen a scene of the characters just chatting since like what, episode 2 or something. Or like I think just since just like episode 2, like before the elimination where they had that little scene. And now we haven't really seen just a scene of the characters chatting to each other, right? So like I don't know. I personally would have definitely given the viewers an opportunity to vote here and make this, you know, that little bit filler episode with more conversationally and stuff. But nah, I mean, overall, look, okay, personally, I do think Plastic Bag was a deserved winner. They did way better in the challenges than the other two. The other two were just kind of coasting by not getting voted, by not being relevant enough to get voted. So like, especially Dashi, like it was the entire joke for like half of the other sections that I'm like, GD isn't doing anything, but they're just getting by the finale because nobody cares about them enough to vote for them, right? And then the police out was like mediocre. They did some challenges. They were the MVP, you know, sacrificing themselves to get Poisony out, right? And all of that good stuff. However, unfortunately, nah. Yeah, they were not good. So I would have personally had Plastic Bad be safe anyway. But, you know, like, I want a non-randomizer pick. I want this to be a democratic decision. Well, you don't just pick the president of the U.S. because you freaking randomize TV it, you know. But okay then, sure. I mean, maybe the concern was that the voting numbers aren't going to be high or something. Could that be the concern? I mean, I don't know, but we were getting votes. You could keep the votes up for longer. If anything, like keep them up for a week or whatever. Right? Like it could have been something. But anyways, yeah, show was alright. I mean, considering it's a 1-minute object show, the challenges I think were pretty solid in the sense of 1-minute shows, because a lot of the time we end up having shows of this scale do challenges that are impossible for the scale, but I think for this show, we had a small cast that was easy to deal with within 1 minute, and we had challenges that were relatively easy to complete within 1 minute, meaning that, in my opinion, I think that this show was pretty smart. The only changes that I do is I would probably extend the episodes a bit. Like I think an additional minute per episode would really benefit because it would allow more conversations to happen. Because after episode 2, when the time was locked in at 1 minute per episode, conversations between characters pretty much entirely stopped happening, you know? And then you just kind of lose the connection to the character because you never see them do anything. So I would personally add on an additional minute and maybe bump up the production time, but I think a 2 minute episode at least would be better than a 1 minute episode. And the second thing that I'd absolutely make is I would title this show properly. Like, I would use the full name in the title because, like, to be honest, um TT isn't getting searched, TT, like, maybe, like, because if you search TT object show, if I'm not mistaken, what shows up is TikTok, because TikTok can abbreviate to TT, right? So you just get TikTok compilations, a bunch of other stuff, right? So you're not gonna find it if you search TT, but if you search trophy takedown, nothing shows up right now because it doesn't know what you're looking for. But if an object show comes by and in the title is called trophy takedown, then we can possibly have it show up in search, at least, because, like, this is the type of thing where, like, I'm telling you, I searched for this show. I searched trophy takedown object show, put it in square brackets, put it in, not in square brackets, put it in air quotes, right, to narrow down the search. It didn't work. You just did not find it, right? Because it wasn't called that. So I would personally change the titles of them into trophy takedown. That way it's possible to find, right? Because currently the only way to find these videos is honestly through YouTube randomly giving them to people, because otherwise it's kind of not possible. So yeah, my opinion, turn the titles into trophy takedown rather than TT. And in a future season, maybe double the length of an episode. I think it's really worth it. It would make the episodes way more of a good watch, to be honest, if they have that additional time to have the characters talk to each other in any sort of way, because with 1 minute there just isn't enough time to do that. That's all. Let's go to an outro. Yeah, we're done. And with that, that is going to be all for this episode of Object Catch-Up. It was, it was a relatively long one. We ended up getting, I think, ourselves back on board a little bit after the woes of the past few days that have been a little bit more difficult to make an episode. Hopefully this one gets me more, on track than before, because, yeah. But it was a cool video. We got to take a look at some of those episodes that we needed to catch up with. Some of the small requests that I felt like we could cover from show creators as well. And access denied, which was just, that's moi. It was epic, right? So yeah. Yeah, nothing else really to say right now. I don't go shout outs. I don't go anything else. Do whatever YouTube engagement stuff you want to do if you're somehow here at this outro. And yeah, that'll be all for today. Goodbye, because we're all caught up with the shows that we currently are. Bye bye.